welcome back, Vintage Gamers. This is going to be a recap video of my trip to Italy to play in the 4Seasons tournament. If you don't know, 4Seasons is an awesome Italian vintage series featuring a lot of the Eternal format. So there'll be a large, 500, 600 player modern event, a large 300, 400 player legacy event, as well as a really fun all proxy team trios of modern, legacy, vintage. As well as a reasonably sized vintage event, and obviously you're in Italy, so you have some of the best food and the coolest people in the world, right? So what I'm going to do today is just go over my trip. I'm going to go over my decks. I'm going to go over the tournaments. I'm just going to probably just do a little show and tell. If you're watching this on a Friday, it's because I have not filmed any more gameplay videos, so there will be no gameplay today. And the reason is because I I got back from Italy and I was very sick. I'm hopefully getting better. But yeah, I was not able to film any more videos to get some gameplay out there. But hopefully, if you are interested, this will be a fun little enjoyable recap video of my trip to Italy. So what I'll do is I'll start with the deck that I brought, and I'll talk about why I did the things I did in my deck list, and then we'll move on from there. So I played or wanted to bring and play Pio in this tournament, and that is not because I think Pio is the best deck in the field. Actually, I find Pio to be really, really rough right now. I think it's just not in the same place power level wise that it was even a year ago. And I think that it makes more sense to even be playing the coveted jewel deck with POs in it than a dedicated PO deck like you see in front of you. However, this is the deck that I am the best at. I can confidently say that I'm one of the best paradoxical outcome players in the world, and I have up near the most reps of any player with the deck. I would think those are not outlandish statements to make. And I actually own all of these magic cards, or most of these magic cards, which is a pretty big plus for a paper event. And even though these vintage events at 4Seasons are now full proxy, it does feel good and worthwhile to me to utilize cards that I own and to play with them in these events. So I wanted to make the best PO deck I could for this event, and you'll see kind of an abnormal version of my PO list. Now, it is still just a Justin PO list, an Esper Saga list. I have kept the 2 opals from testing. I did like that. I wanted to bring a Remora, a Negation, and a Mindbreak Trap as some of my flex slots. And the reason I did that is because I highly suspected there would be a lot of players playing the coveted jewel list. It is one of the highest performing decks on Magic Online, and it is one of the most vintage-like decks in the field. It feels very powerful. It feels very unique and very vintagey. So I decided I would play Remora, Negation, and Mind Ray Trap as cards to help beat those decks. One of the very nice things I like about Negation and Mind Ray Trap in Paradoxical Outcome, as opposed to something like Esper Tinker, is that not only are we casting these cards for hard cast mana pretty reasonably with Mox Opal, but we are also able to utilize these and make a very vintage level play of using our opponent's turn as a fulfilling requirement for counter spells, right? So because Paradoxical Outcome can be cast at instant speed at the end of the opponent's turn, we actually can protect our big combo piece with Force of Negation, whereas you can't protect Tinker with Force of Negation. Another thing is Mindbreak Trap. If we let our opponent go, Mox, Jewel, we can actually respond with PO for 3, 4, or maybe not, but respond with some kind of powerful spell, ancestral, PO, that kind of thing. And then if our opponent goes to counter our payoff spell or our combo spell, then we can actually trap their payoff and their counter in the same fell swoop. So that's the kind of the logic here. I do think I probably should have played more than 1 Lavinia. I really dislike playing more than 1 Lavinia because they're clunky and they're bad, but they can be pitched to Force of Will, and they're just so good against the metagame. This should definitely be 2 Lavinias. We'll talk more about that later, but I played 1 Lavinia because I just didn't want to. Played 1 Teferi because I think it's a powerful flex slot. Once you get more than 1 Teferi, it gets a little clunky again because they're 3 drops, but the first Teferi has always been very good for me in these Esper style shells, and that's mostly the normal main. I went there with no Hercules in the main. I didn't expect to see a lot of paper shops, but I did respect it enough to put some in the board. I do like to have a disenchant for a variety of those like saga-based decks. I wanted to play Camball as another nod to these jewel-based combo decks, and then the rest of this is pretty self-explanatory. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go up through my Twitter timeline and just go through the event. So it started off flying out on Wednesday night. This time I made a pretty large mistake, I think, where I booked a 3-flight expedition over to Italy, Boston to Barcelona to Madrid, Madrid to Bologna. And now I never do that. I normally go one stop through Switzerland, and it's normally, I don't know, 500, 600 euros. But because of the holiday in Italy and the seasons in the summer, all the normal flights were like 1,300, 1,400, and I couldn't really afford to make that kind of commitment. However, I found this, Spanish flight for, 900, and so I decided, okay, you know what, we'll do it. It was either like take this 900 flight or probably don't go. So, quite the expedition over to to Italy. We on the very first night I was there, we actually were able to get a nice stop in here at Molino, which is one of my favorite restaurants in the entire world. I would say that's not even an exaggeration. I'm sorry, these pictures are not the greatest. I wanted to just eat right away. For those of you who don't know, Molino is I believe a restaurant owned by Anda or Lorenzo, who is one of the people who helps organize 4Seasons. And I'm always very grateful when they're able to get me a table at their restaurant, as it's just so good. So here you're seeing a variety of, well, that's a blurry thing of nothing, but this might be one of my favorite dishes of the whole thing. It's got like it's pasta with some meat inside. I couldn't tell you more details. I a lot of the time I'm just say, whatever you are willing to put in front of me, I know I'm going to eat it. And I'm kind of a picky eater, but anything they make at Molino is just unbelievable. So like I said earlier, the best part about an Italian tournament is a lot of time is the food. So we stayed at this fairly nice hotel. Though the one we normally stay at I actually kind of like better. Unfortunately, this pool wasn't even open, which made me kind of sad. We are like a little bit before the opening of the summer season, I think, over in Italy, but so not ideal. But one of the cool parts is here, as you can see, here's the first tournament we played in. This is Vintage Legacy Modern Team Trios, and we had 59 players or 59 teams, I should say, for the Friday tournament. Oh, I always take a picture of this because I always think this is so cool. This is at the venue. The venue has a restaurant with it. So it's definitely very interesting for American players because this is not a very American thing. But the tournament is held at a community center, which I guess the closest correlation for an American audience would be something like a YMCA almost. But it is basically a community hall where there's lots of other things going on at this place. There's billiards and bingo and bocce and all kinds of fun things. There's like a big cafe area, so there's coffee and food and drinks. You'll often, like near the end of the tournament, you'll see a lot of older Italians watching like a football game on the big screen together. Everyone's drinking and stuff. So this tournament hall has a restaurant attached, and it is it's a full-fledged. You're gonna get some good food. There's some lasagna, which I think is awesome. So like at any time you can get food, you can get coffee, you can get beers. And it's really a nice just like experience instead of being in like a convention center. So 59 teams for Vintage Legacy and Modern. And for this tournament, I teamed up with some powerful wizards. I teamed up with Matt Brown and Dinglis, both from England, who played Value Breach in Modern, and Matt Brown played Lands in Legacy. And that did not go well. The Dinglis had a pretty good time, went like 4-2. Matt had a rough time playing lands because our first 2 rounds of opponents were on storms, different storm decks. And so I think Matt went 2-4. And then I'll tell you about all my matches because those are the ones that I actually played. But it went extremely poorly. So round 1, I play against Doomsday. And I have to say, I might have the most pre-boarded deck against Doomsday in the history of ever. Not to mention, I have double Dress Down, Lavinia, Remora, Negation, Mindbreak Trap, Narset. This deck is just extremely, extremely pre-boarded for Doomsday. My opponents led with Duress, and my opening hand had a Mindbreak Trap, and my opponent's like, Oh no, what is going on here? So I had a pretty easy set of games against Doomsday, just because my deck is just so boarded for Doomsday. In game two, I actually resolved a Cam against Doomsday, and that deck cannot beat a Cam. My opponent, cast cantrips and got drained out of life, and it is what it is. It is worth noting that like a lot of the players who play Vintage in the trios are, maybe the third seat of a bunch of people who want to play, but maybe don't play like Vintage so often, right? So I played against like a good number of people who were playing Vintage for either the first time or fairly new to the format, or like, they are typically a Legacy or a Modern player, which actually made for the metagame to be a little bit different than the actual Vintage event metagame, which was kind of interesting. In round two, I played against Mono White and I got my butt kicked. It always feels like I'm half a turn away from beating Mono White. And when they have a Chancellor, it really is just enough to stop me. In the first time versus Mono White, I actually set up a really nice sequence where I vamped for a dress down, and I dressed down 3 Archons. Like removal spells would never have beaten those Archons, but I dressed them all down at the same time. So all I need to do is draw with my dress down, draw for turn, spin with top, and if any of my top 4 cards are a PO, I win. Or I guess that's top 5 cards or something like that. And I did that, and I missed, and I lost, and that happens. And then in my third round, I played against Mono White again, and a very similar situation happened, where I was able to, dress down end of turn, set up a Citadel, and my Citadel just did not have a PO in my top 30 cards or something, 20 cards or something like that, which just means I lost, and that happens. I still believe that my deck is fairly good against Mono White, but I am being less convinced over time, which is not a good thing. And then I faced, a variety of evil wizards, necromancers maybe. I played against Squee, and I lost. And then I played against Squee, and I lost. And then I played against Squee, and I won. So we had to play against 3 Squee in a row, which is, for anyone who's been following the stream for a long time, a horrific matchup for my deck, and quite the beating. I actually got pretty much murdered by 2 players who were, fairly new to Vintage, and then in round 6, I actually played against Rodrigo de Gores, who is, very good Squee player, and we played 6 games, or maybe 5 games. It was either 5 or 6 games, because we were just waiting for the rest of the table to finish, and I actually went something like 4-1, 5-1. It was crazy. It was the craziest variance. I had the highest rolls. It was absurd. It was pretty funny. There was a moment, because at this point we're 2-3, and we're completely dead. And I've been drinking now for at least 1 or 2 rounds. Because once you take your second loss, you're dead for the top 8, and I consider that to be the beer bracket. And at that point, you should be having a beer with your match. So I was drinking, and very thankful that Rodrigo is accepting of some of my eccentricities. Eccentricities? That's almost a word. Because what happened was in our match, in our actual first game, I believe, I deployed a turn 1 Lavinia, and I was pretty happy. Black Lotus Lavinia, my opponent can't cast resolve any more spells from their deck for the whole entirety of the game. So I'm thinking, 90% to win, 95% to win, something super high. Rodrigo comes back around and goes, activates Bazaar, put 2 Vengevines in the yard, and then put 2 Vengevines in the yard, cast a Root Wall, it gets countered, cast a Hollow One, it gets countered, put 2 Vengevine into play, hit you for 8. And at that point, I exclaimed, what is this nonsense? I can never win, or something along those lines. And then I proceeded to spin and draw exactly Mox, Mana Crypt, Opal, PO, win the game. So oh, sorry, that was pretty rude of me, but it was a funny moment down in the beer bracket. So we ended up playing like 4 or 5 games, and I actually had a really strong time. I do think this deck can beat Squee, but it's bad, right? It's definitely going to be bad. It gets better when you put more Lavinias in their deck, so maybe more Lavinias is the key here. So after this set, I did change my deck. So I was not happy with the amount of mono white in the room and the amount of, I thought the jewel was less jewel than I thought there were going to be. There was still a lot of jewel, but there was less jewel than I thought there was going to be. So what I did was I swapped Mindbreak Trap and I put the balance in the main, and then there's no artifacts in the room, so I took a Hercules out, and what I did is I put a Caracas in the board. And the reason I put a Caracas in the board is because almost all of the English-speaking crew was on this Esper Tinker deck that had 2 or 3 Lavinias in it, and I just really didn't want to go through that. So I put a Caracas in my board. I definitely probably at this point should have cut the Remora. The Remora was not very good, unfortunately. Actually, in day 3, it did some things, but overall, I would say don't play Remora. It's a cool card. It does a cool, unique thing, and it definitely actually works against Coveted Jewel, but a little narrow, I would say. Okay, so that was our Friday. Let's see. Here's a picture of me in the beer bracket where because I went 2-4 with Pio. But the good news is we had a good night out. We went to actually some kind of pub where they serve pasta by the kilo and beer by the tower, and you see Sahara and Dinglis. It was a fun night out. We had a good time. I think I ate too much pasta on this trip, but when in Italy, right? Here's a picture, nice picture from Mangucci of the modern event. So there was 432 players, 10-round modern event. I'm pretty happy I did not play in that. But if I recall correctly, the last time I was there, it was maybe 500 or 600 players. But I think it was an Italian holiday weekend, and it was start of the summer, so I think the numbers were a little bit lower than normal. Yeah. So then I have Vintage 4Seasons. I don't have a picture to start here, but I definitely played this deck. There were 45 or so players in this vintage event, which is, a little lower than I would like, but not a bad number for a vintage event, surely, especially when there's a many thousand euro modern event happening in the same place. So I played this deck, and I didn't feel very confident going into the event, but I was pretty locked down on doing this thing. So let's see, what did we play against? I guess I'm going to actually need this. Sorry, spoilers. Round 1, we played against Initiative, where I got crushed in game 1, but was able to pull back games 2 and 3. This was really funny because my opponent opened. We had just been repaired due to some kind of issue in round 1. And my opponent opened with Mox, Lotus, Chalice, Seasoned Engineer, and I was just like, can we get another repair, please? No repair. I just died. But I was able to pull off a couple sweet wins to get back there. Then I played versus someone on an Esper Lurrus deck, which I thought was quite cool. Looks like they were playing maybe Saga and Volkey, but they were also playing like Dark Confidant and some different bears, like a Cathar Commando. So maybe like a little bit of a BPK style deck. I thought that deck was quite cool. I do think that Dark Confidant might be getting underutilized right now in Vintage. I think Dark Confidant could be a place where I want to explore more, especially when you're putting it in like a Lurrus deck where you can like get Lurrus to give you life gain back, so you don't have to worry too much about your forces and your delve spells. But either way, that was pretty interesting match. Then I played against a Grixis Tinker Breach deck, and I mean the game led with my opponent going like fetch land, Ruby, go. I cast Ancestral, they Pyroblasted or something crazy. And maybe it wasn't Ancestral, it was some kind of blue spell. And I got Pyroblasted off of Ruby, and I got like, I think in game 1 or 2, I might have gotten Mindbreak trapped, that kind of stuff. So like it was pretty impossible. Tinker Mirror is sometimes like that, especially when your opponent's on not Mindbreak trap, Pyroblast. Pyroblast is tough. Then I played against Dinglis, who was on that Esper Tinker deck I was talking about before. I think would have lost this game. Unfortunately, like there was Dinglis made an error where they put a mana crypt into play before taking infinite turns, and unfortunately, they didn't hit the cards they needed to not die to the mana crypt before killing before dying. So I was pretty lucky to get this win. However, I definitely think that I should have, if I played well, I could have won this too, because I just demonicked for the absolute wrong target. Like I demonicked for a dress down for these constructs because I felt like I was going to win the long game, and I was worried that my Tinker would get Flusterstormed. However, what happened was my opponent had natural Vault for Saga Key, and I didn't have the requisite things to deal with that. So I didn't have a Flusterstorm. I could have just tinkered. I kind of feel like I've been trending this way recently, where I try to play around too many things, and sometimes I need to just jam Tinker and hope it works. So which is kind of how I started playing Magic. So maybe I need to go back to my roots. Then I played against Jeskai Luris. I actually had just a smashing set of games versus Jeskai Luris. I like basically Teferi and Narset ran away with a couple games. Early, like turn one Teferi when my opponent didn't have a Pyroblast, and like Teferi like ticking up against the Dreadhorde Arcanist. They can't even cast a spell. It doesn't even puncture the Teferi. Basically Teferi just basically solo dart the Jeskai opponent. When there's no Pyroblast, Teferi just does some serious work. I really think that maybe I'm supposed to be playing 2 Teferis. Teferi was just unbelievable the entire weekend. But again, like the second Teferi is pretty clunky, so hard to say. This let me draw with my round 6 opponent and make top 8, which is nice. We saw the top 8 split the top 8 prize structure, and I felt like, flying over an ocean to play for, play and split like for like 100 euros or whatever was not ideal for me. So I told everybody that we were we were battling. There will be no splitting. Italians, they love to split. They want to split and go eat dinner, which I get. When dinner is that good, it makes a lot of sense. But I'm here to battle. And so in karmic fashion, as per usual, the person who does not want to split gets mowed over in top 8. I played against Da Vinci MTG on Jewel, and we played a pretty crazy 3-game set, to be perfectly honest. Lots of his opening hands were extremely powerful, like turn 1 Jewel with Force Backup, turn 1 Forge with Force Backup, these kind of hands. But we ended up going 3 games, which was pretty cool. Game 1, I kept a pretty interesting hand on the draw of Tinker, Demonic Tutor, Demonic Tutor, blue card, Tinker, Demonic Tutor, blue card, Negation, and then off-color Moxen and Opal. So I can't cast any spell in my deck, or any spell in my hand, I should say. And I can negate their first turn play, and then I can untap, and if I draw a land that makes black mana, I can Demonic for a Crypt and cast Tinker, and if I cast most of my mana rocks, if I draw them, I can also cast Tinker. So I decided to keep that hand. I negate their turn 1 Turnisphere, untap, draw Force of Will, which is not bad. That's totally not bad. I pass. They played turn 2 Jewel. I force it. I take it again. I miss again. They miss once. I miss again, and then they cast second Jewel and kill me. So unfortunate set of circumstances, but I think I like the keep in general. I just didn't draw the right cards I needed to win the game. I think I would do it again, and hopefully I would win some of those matches, or some of those games. Game 2 was even crazier. I probe my opponent, and they have turn 1 Jewel with Force Backup. I have a Force, and not too much else, but I have a Disenchant. So what I do is they force back. With the Jewel trigger on the stack, I disenchant the duel, and I just hope that they fizzle. And they did. They fizzled. And then I play a really long game where I play maybe too conservatively and just make sure my opponent can't do anything. Don't put any permanents in play that can get metamorphed. Like one point in that game, I like mystical or vamped for like a PO instead of a Tinker because I just didn't want to like possibly play my Citadel fizzle and have them metamorph my Citadel, things like that. Maybe too conservative, maybe not. But I just basically played a controlling role until the end of the game, and I won that game. And then in game 3, I think it was more of the same, right? Like they played like a turn 1 Mystic Forge with I force it. They had Force Backup, and then I'm like, I didn't have the Moxen to play the turn 1 Disenchant on the Mystic Forge. However, I think if I did have the Moxen, I disenchant the Mystic Forge. I might have been okay in that game, but I missed, and at that point I fell too far behind, and eventually they just played a Jewel and it snowballed, and I lost. So, not a bad showing here, but I feel like my play was a little lackluster, and I got a little lucky to even top 8 this event. So not a huge one. Not a huge deal, all things considered. So, but, a nice top 8. I'm always happy to top 8 the event I came here for. And last time I went, I did not top 8 the Vintage event. So here's a nice picture of the Vintage top 8. You can see here, this is a log T1. If someone you will remember from chat. This is Raphael, good friend. And then this is Da Vinci. And then a variety of other colorful characters. Lots of whom play on Magic Online. So the top 8 ended up being something like 2 Jeskai, 2 Esper Tinker, 2 Jewel, 1 PO, and 1 Crixus Breach or something similar to that. So um, yeah, that was cool. A nice vintage top 8. Here's a nice picture of meeting some buddies here. This is the Deck 84. You probably played against him on Breach, and Ravadel 85. But both really wonderful people, and we got some beers and had a good time. Here's a picture from me dying in the top 8. And then here is, of course, the best part, dinner after Saturday's night. So English-speaking table and was this the Austrian table maybe? Hope I didn't get that wrong. But all very fun and interesting people to have and we ended up back in Molinos again, but can never complain about having more Molinos in your life. So yeah, not bad. Nice Saturday at 4Seasons. And then moving on, here is the Sunday event. Sunday was a Legacy main event, 300 players. I was going to borrow Delver, and people did not have a high opinion of the Delver deck, so I ended up borrowing Blue-Black Shadow. And I just basically played horribly and lost because of it. It was very visible to me the mistakes I was making, and they definitely wouldn't be mistakes I would make if I played 100 matches with the deck. But things like just dazing at the wrong time, misevaluating resources, like just things that I just showed my legacy and experience with. I think if I had to do this again, I would look harder and try to borrow a Painter deck. Painter vibe with me in a very good way, where these blue Brainstorm decks, they just don't vibe with me very well. So luckily I was able to drop from this event at 1 and 2, grab some nice food from the cafeteria area, and join in the vintage side event. So there was a vintage side event on Sunday, and it was like 16 players, nice little side event, and that went awful. That went absolutely terrible. I think I went 1 and 5 or something like that. No, it couldn't have been that. It must have been 1 and 4. At some point, I just stopped putting too much thought in. I think like at one point I went turn 1 Tinker Citadel against like 4-color Deathray Shaman, and I immediately got biggered, and I was like, oh, guess I should have gotten Sphinx, and I realized I didn't even put Sphinx in my into my deck post board. So like that's the level of play I was putting out on that final event. But it was nice because I just wanted to play and hang out for the remainder of the day. Of course, I then attempted to fly home on Monday. However, that didn't go super well, as my flight out of Italy was delayed due to the strike, and by having my flight delayed, I missed all of my other flights. So my flight was delayed. Thankfully, the airline was pretty good. They rebooked me for Madrid to Boston the next day, and they put me up in a hotel and gave me dinner and breakfast. So overall, not too bad. All things considered, that could have gone a lot worse. So then I ended up flying into Boston a day later, and of course, when I landed, I was super sick by the time I landed, and not in the best shape. So, however, I definitely was happy I went. I felt like it was a good trip, good worthwhile trip. I always love attending 4Seasons, and I definitely tell anyone who has the ability and means to go that they should. The fact that vintages and team trios are full proxy, it means they are very, very accessible. And even if you're just a modern player, you could do a team trios, and then on Saturday play the modern main event. So good food, good people, good magic, great time. Coming up, I am hopefully going to be better by the time my next vacation starts next week. We'll see. If I can, get myself in good shape to record some videos. I'm hoping to just, keep putting out some gameplay videos. I'm going to start working on, I think my plan is I'm going to start learning Doomsday. I think the time has come to shelve this deck a little bit. I'm really not happy with the power level of this deck in the current format. So I'm going to look to try to learn Doomsday, which I feel is maybe, the best or second best deck in the format right now. And that will hopefully allow me to have some more options when playing in a tournament. So definitely have a bunch of videos to make for everybody, and hopefully we'll be able to, put those out there on the normal schedule. If I don't end up making the videos, unfortunately, I'll let you, of course, know on YouTube. That would just be because I don't have the time or the wellness to put those out there. But this went okay. I think I'm past the worst of it, and I'm hoping that I'll start feeling like really good by tomorrow, and then I'll be able to to really work through things. So thanks for hanging out. Thanks for watching. I hope this was at least somewhat enjoyable to everyone. And I'll catch you for more vintage content. See you then.